Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Linda Marone. I'm Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I will be your moderator today. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get ready for tomorrow's technology. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs both today and in the future. This morning we're very excited to have Noz Urbina from Mekon Limited with us. Noz is the Senior Consultant and Business Development Manager at Mekon, where he defines and enhances the customer engagement process from beginning to end. With years of experience as a content strategy and content management consultant, Noz has provided services to Fortune 500 organizations and small to medium enterprises. His expertise is called upon for requirements analysis, project planning and scoping, as well as tool selection, support, and training. Mekon is a leading global systems integrator based in the UK and focused on increasing the effectiveness of business content and technical communications. Thought leaders in XML and complex content processes, they leverage their expertise and cross-industry experience to help clients move their content from a cost center to a business asset. Our session today will focus on socializing your information to ensure your community and formally created content play nicely together. Noz will demonstrate best practice concepts as well as specific case study examples, leveraging the user community to enrich and contribute to formal product content online. We are thrilled that Noz is here to share his experience with us today. So now I will turn the presentation over to Noz from Mekon.
Thank you very much, Linda. Just getting my slides up here. Okay, I hope everybody can hear me okay. So, as Linda said, I'm going to be covering socially enabling documentation in the cloud, dangers, benefits, getting there. I must say, of all the presentations that I've done, this is one of the ones I am most excited about. I have had huge idea overload. So I will be going through this at a brisk pace, but we will have time for Q&A at the end. And you've got Linda's details up on the screen as well as my own for questions and communications that you can do as follow-up. So today we're going to be looking at social media, quick definition of what it is, because I think there is a lot of ambiguity around that. What exactly the cloud is as well. Documentation, I think that most of the people in the audience will know, but I'm going to call out the significant points which I think are relevant to the session. And then what socially enabled documentation is, putting it all together. I'm going to look at a couple of examples. Mozilla, which is an open source project, so obviously that's not a project that we've implemented, and two projects that we have implemented for actual customers. One, a medical devices manufacturer, who works in a very controlled industry. Medical devices and pharmaceuticals, auditability, security, safety are very important. And then Betfair, if I have time, I will show you a little bit as well, which is a software documentation project. We're going to talk a little bit about the dangers throughout. I'll be pulling out dangers of various aspects of social publishing. And then getting there. Again, I'll be doing several concepts and the underlying bit throughout, but wrap up with several tips and suggestions that I have for how to get your project off the ground and successful. So, quick little bit about me. Linda, thank you, Linda, for that excellent introduction. If you want to keep in touch on what I'm doing and also the presentations and concepts that I'm involved in, there's my blog there. You can see more about my company at mekon.com, and this is my blog, lessworkmoreflow.blogspot.com. You can subscribe there, and you'll get my regular email posts. And I'll also be talking next week in Wiesbaden, Germany, at the TCOM conference, TC World Conference. the world's largest technical communications conference, in fact, where we'll be with Scott Abel, Anne Rockley, Rahel Bailey, and other content strategists at the TCOM Content Strategy Day. I also encourage you to look up more sessions on the DCL Learning Series. You can find those by searching the LinkedIn groups for DCL Learning Series. Upcoming in that, myself and with the help brought to you by DCL, we'll be doing a 3-part mini webinar series on new features of Data 1.2. What are the new features? Why would you use them? We're going to do really little bite-sized webinars that you can come on to and do a lot of Q&A and just get a quick overview of what's new in Data 1.2. Okay, straight into social media. So social media has many faces and its own kind of odd brand. So a lot of people consider social media to be quite light, fluffy. Flickr, YouTube, blogging, Twitter, Facebook are kind of the usual suspects when it comes to social media. But I'd like to step back a little bit and talk about not the specific social media platforms which are famous, but what is social media abstracted from all these different things. Anything that is social media is a community of stakeholders that are communicating and interrelating with each other. And when they're doing that, they're adding value to the communications platform itself. So Wikipedia, Facebook, Flickr, Twitter, all these sites don't contain anything or do anything which is interesting to anybody. They put together people who add value to the platform with the artifacts they create. So through its use, the platform becomes more valuable to everyone who participates in it. And a social media platform contains these recognizable aspects, this social recognition. A regular website, you are anonymous. You're a consumer. You're consuming the content of a publisher. In a socialized website, there is a personality. You're you, I'm me. We have logins and avatars, and we're speaking person to person and organization to organization. There's quite often a commenting and feedback feature. So comments are, the exchange of ideas. The biggest expression of comments is, of course, a forum discussion, and feedback is things that are from the consumer of a piece of content to the owner. So if you had a comment saying that there's an error or that you want to rank a piece of material, you can give that feedback. Ranking can be automatic and it could be manual. So automatically you can rank things by hits, by when they were posted, how popular they seem to be, and then there's manual ranking. So you can +1 something, you can like it, you can give it a 4-star rating or a 2-star rating, and so on. There's relationships in social media. There's automatic relationships between different pieces of content, and then there's manual relationships. So if you think about Facebook or a news website like the CNN or the BBC or Guardian, there's automatic relationships. So that if they post a new article of content, when you get down at the bottom, things that are also interesting to the people who read the article automatically show up. And they do that through keywords and metadata automatically. Then there's manual relationships, like someone reads a blog entry or reads a piece of content and posts a link manually to something else, which forms a new relationship that the computer didn't do on its own. And then there's, of course, the personal relationships. We are talking about social media, and so the relationship between different users and the human aspect of it does come through in social media. Social media platforms have also brought tagging into our regular life. Tagging was, under its fancier name, metadata, was something that was done by webmasters in the days of old internet. Tagging today is done by the community. You tag things with certain subjects, things that are relevant to certain audiences. I tag all my blog posts when they're relevant to content strategy, or when they're relevant to a conference or to communications, or so on. And there's also original content and knowledge in in social media. So again, unlike a regular website where the consumers are strictly consumers, in social media, as I said, they are creating the content and creating the knowledge that is being shared. One of the interesting points that I like to think about with social media is things like Yahoo Answers or WikiHow, or the fact that so many people go onto Twitter and say, I can't get I can't get iTunes to do this or that. Can somebody help me? So it's not just exchanging social stuff like what I'm doing, I'm eating at Starbucks. It's also exchanging actual knowledge. People put up questions and they get answers, and this is one of the most frequent things that happens on social media. So again, these areas here, these are the features of social media that I'd like you to consider as we go forward in the presentation. Technical documentation, of course, is the content that supports using, installing, maintaining, decommissioning of product. I want to bring out of that there's lots of ings in that. Clearly, it should be fundamentally task-oriented. As far as I'm concerned, the goal of technical documentation is not to create good technical documentation, it's to help people do things. So it's purely enablement and transfer of knowledge. We've been single sourcing in technical documentation since before there was an intranet. When I'm presenting at web conferences where there's content strategists who come from a more purely web background, I've had them ask me what single sourcing meant. Whereas we've been single sourcing when we had to do 2 books, 2 manuals for 2 different airplanes, when we were just printing them on paper and they were being carried out to the runway. So as I said, enablement, we have that in, out, done ethos. Technical documentation, trying to get the user back up and running as fast as possible. So there's kind of a disconnect with the whole social aspect and socializing on the content and around the content. And today, minimalism is a key component of technical documentation. This is one of my favorite quotes on minimalism. When we're thinking about documentation today, we're looking for the minimum effective dose of content. How little can we create and still be effective, still be efficient? That's for keep translation costs down, keep consumption times down, and keep portability and reusability up. And I'll be talking about this more later. That quote is from David Farby, who's been a speaker at several of the events that we organized, and is a clever guy all around. So the cool kids these days call it technical communication, and in some circles user assistance. TechCom tends to be mainly in kind of the manual and documentation world, and user assistance tends to be used more for online help, context-sensitive help, what was kind of the F1 key stuff for software products. But really it's all technical communications at the end of the day under different names. So as Linda said at the beginning, I work with clients on a regular basis as a consultant, looking at their technical communications and business content workflows. And this is an architecture which I use all the time. The systems that I work on are systems that are helping people move to a more task-oriented workflow where planning is more significant, where they plan and write components of information which usually go into a CMS system as opposed to a file system. But that is a CMS system which is designed for data content. A lot of them are looking at components to help them enhance review and collaboration, online and offline, lower translation costs. But it's here where we're kind of mainly focusing today, the usage. The CMS, and many people get confused on this, the CMS manages the creation of the content. Once the content is created, once it's ready, you put it out into the delivery platform, and that's when you actually use it. That's when actually people can consume it. That's where it gets turned into an assembly of topics like this into being a PDF or a CHM file or a web page. So these systems feed out multiple formats. I've got my mobile devices, web, print, and so on. But today, more and more, we're looking at going to multiple audiences as well as formats. Single sourcing 10 years ago meant I want to get my manual in CHM format, electronic consumption, and I want to be able to print it as well. Single sourcing today is I want to address internal customers differently than external customers. I want to address partners different than end customers. I want to address gold customers differently than the rest of the world, and so on and so on. And most significantly, I want to be absorbing content from the field, from the community, back into this content platform. So what we're seeing here is no longer a linear flow from left to right, but actually a cycle where once we get out, we want to be circling back again and looking at a life cycle of information coming back. Okay, so then we have to marry that with the cloud computing concepts. So I'll do this quickly. Cloud computing is delivery of computing as a service rather than a product. So in the cloud, you share resources and information to computers and other devices like a network, like a utility, like the electricity grid, typically over the internet. Oh, that was a misclick on my part. The significant part of that is when we think of it as a service versus product. Content can be conceived of and delivered as a service versus encapsulated in deliverables. The way I like to explain this is a lot of people need to be thinking about their product knowledge, not thinking about how they're going to manage the KB, how they're going to create the manual, how they're going to create the help. So distributing content within these boxes restricts it. When we look at it as a body of knowledge, and then we look at these as channels that we can put it out on, then we're looking at content as a service. And then we're ready to start thinking about moving it into the cloud. The best example I like to give people is the one I mentioned earlier. Think of the way that news providers pipe their content around. Reuters or CNN or the BBC, their content appears on sites around the world, many of which are obviously not owned by them. Their media, their articles that they write show up on syndications and affiliates all over the place, in print, on handheld devices, on websites. They are doing everything that we are going to be talking about doing today. Under the hood is that metadata. So the relationships, related articles. If you're looking about articles about the Middle East, you're going to get relationships to other articles about the Middle East, or you can plug it into another website and automatically create relationships to their articles about the Middle East, which are different than your articles about the Middle East. So that's the kind of delivery and thinking that we're looking at. You don't lose the manual. You don't lose the help. Each static deliverable is one view for one context at one time. So if you ever needed to generate a PDF, a print manual, push off an online help, to go, to disconnect from the network, all those are still possible. But we're looking at the content abstracted from them so we can deliver it to the user as they want it in the format they want it. And this is enabled by this format-neutral, not proprietary content in things like DITA and XML. We also need a database that supports the reuse of the modules that we create, and we need the delivery platform that I showed you on the previous slide that supports the querying of this content. So in the same way that you're looking at it as a service, I want you to think when you go forward not about seeing your content documents, but seeing it like you see a database. You can mishmash it in different ways, pull out different views, and from the cloud, deliver different people different things. One of the main tools that we're using today to do that is something called DITA. I've got some introduction to DITA webinars available on my blog and through my company website. But very briefly, DITA is a system for modularizing content. You write content in standalone modules that can be reused. Minimalism is fundamental to the DITA way of writing. It lowers the word count if it's done properly, which is good for translation inherently. But also for managing, you can review and translate only what's changed. As I said, it's format neutral. But in DITA, you also have extensive and portable metadata. So in online formats like CHM or other web help formats, what they don't have is a good architecture for making all of the metadata about a given article, a given procedure, a given API reference, a given task, part of that module so that it's portable regardless of how I view it. It's easy to get to data from HTML. It's easy to get to HTML from data. So content can start life in one format and evolve into data so that it can be reused later. Just going to jump out, show you a little example here of the anatomy of a data topic. So this is data topic. This is a concept. You don't have to be an XML expert. I'm just going to do this quickly. What I want to show you is we've got these tags that label up different parts of the content. I've got a whole concept topic wrapped up in this tag here. I've got the title there. I've got an abstract which has 2 short descriptions in it. So this is the kind of thing we can do with data. It's very easy for me to say that this short description here has certain attributes which are different than this one here. So this first one here, I've clicked inside it, and if I look at the attributes of this first short description, I can see that the output class is web, print, and tablet. So that allows me to say selectively for web, print, and tablet outputs, use this short description. And then I have a second one down here with output class of handheld. So I've got a description of the primary function and general configuration of the treatment table for formats that can handle that, print, websites where I'm not short on space. When I'm short on space on handheld devices, I have a tiny little short description saying primary function and config. I also mentioned metadata. There is an expansive array of metadata tags that I can put inside a data topic. Here I've shown a couple examples. I've got permissions, which are set to all for the viewability. I can have audience tags, things like administrator, the importance, whose job is it? What job is this involved in? What kind of users? What part of the content lifecycle is this involved in? What product is it related to? Is it a user? Is it an administrator, purchaser, programmer, and so on? And of course, all these are extensible. Like all things that are ready for the web and electronic, it's got keyword management. I can put in as many keywords as I want. And that's all before the body itself. So it's actually this area up here that is one of the things that makes data so exciting. Okay, so without much further ado, I'm going to do the first poll here. So this is my first poll of the session. It has to do with online usage. I've given you kind of the concepts that you're going to need to understand where we're going. And before I get on to the first example, I just want to ask you if your organization is already looking at how to take product content online. So I'll just give you a few seconds to take a look at that and get some answers in. How long are we going to keep the poll open for?
We'll let it go for another 20 seconds.
Okay. So that gives me a second to take a breath.
All right, I'm about to close it.
Okay. Okay, let's see what you said. Right. Okay, that's even a little bit higher than I would have thought. I would have put it around 75. 86% of you said you are today looking at going online. So this is in line with what we're finding with our clients. Everybody wants to know how we can get online for a variety of reasons. Okay, so you can switch me over back to the presentation. So I'm going to show you socially enabled documentation. So all the concepts that I've just been through, when you put them together, what do you get? I'm actually going to jump out quickly to talk about one that shows some of the concepts in action, but not all. The Mozilla example I told you about. So Mozilla Firefox, probably the most famous, successful, and widely used open source project in the world. I don't know if it's still at the top of the heap, but it became the world's most popular browser quite a while ago and held that position for so long that I've got tired of continuing to check. And not only is the code itself open source, of course all the support is open source. So all the support content is socially created. If you go to support.mozilla.com, all this content, this entire site, everything here was created by volunteers in the community who have contributed their time to making the support content that goes with Firefox. And it's got some items which we're going to see more of in the examples we look at when we're going forward. Over here we've got the ability to ask a question directly. So I said, it's not just putting it on me to search for or read. It's asking me to submit a question directly as part of the documentation. I have right up at the top, I can sign in or register, and they're asking me already, do I want to contribute? They're putting this, the social aspect and the community aspect right in there. Top issues, which, if I know this project, will be driven by a level of automation. They'll be looking at, over on the right-hand side, their own taxonomy and their own navigation structure. But top issues will be driven by things like rankings and web statistics that are driven by the community itself. So in effect, the community decides what goes in this navigation here. And then you've got the community of volunteers in a forum who are answering questions down there. So I like this a lot. It's a very, very good and very successful project, and you can see from the statistics which they publish on their blog that they are helping thousands of people a day. However, when we look at it, I'm going to look at a couple of examples, and we looked at this example as in the content strategy Google group recently on content modeling, and we were looking at 3 pages, all about managing plugins. So we've got managing the Flash plugin, using the QuickTime plugin, using the Silverlight plugin. And what we're doing is we're looking at the structure of these pages. And already just looking at these 3, which we kind of picked more or less at random, we can see some inconsistencies coming in. We've got 2, which say using the Silverlight plugin with Firefox, using the QuickTime plugin with Firefox, that have consistent titles, and then one that doesn't, managing the Flash plugin. The QuickTime one has this little logo here, the others don't. I've got very different mini table of contents in the 3 articles. And I've read these in detail, and the differences aren't really always down to the nature of the plugin. They're actually just different because different people contributed them. I'm sure they have a very good style guide, and you can argue that in many cases it gets the job done. But these kind of inconsistencies have downstream effects which are not acceptable for many organizations. So when you're looking at fully social online documentation, there's certain dangers. If you want to single source your content, consistency is everything. You have to have consistent formats, structures, writing style, title styles, like when you use gerund, installing the system, when you capitalize, title length. If you don't have these things consistent, then your documents look patched together. Also, if you don't have them well controlled, you can't do things like have a good long title for print deliverables and a good short one for handheld devices. Inconsistencies like these also contribute to feedback that I get all the time from my customers. We've got a wiki, we've got a forum, we have a knowledge base, but no one can find anything, and no one can trust it when they do. Again, I'm not saying this directly about the Mozilla work. I'm just using it as an example that even in the best fully social documentation can have these issues. Embedded links can break on reuse. Terminology and metadata can be used inconsistently. So you call the same thing different things on different pages, and you confuse users. And if you're writing for reuse, people, especially in the community, will introduce soft dependencies. As above, as we see below. in section X, you will have learned these kind of things we naturally write into content, but they reduce its reusability because when you reuse the module or the page or topic or however you want to conceive it, when you reuse that in a new deliverable, in a new context, on a new device, maybe these dependencies will be broken and your content will lower in quality or even just fail to work. So we address that danger with social enablement versus fully social. Socially enabling TechCom retains control while benefiting from the crowd. So we're going to look at an example of socially enabled documentation from the medical devices manufacturer that I mentioned earlier. This is going to be multimodal, multi-departmental social content. The manufacturer is a medical device manufacturer. They make some very high-tech stuff, like this guy here. You sit in the yellow chair, and this scanner basically reads your mind. It's one of the world's leading clinical solutions firms. They make hardware and software, and the community is very diverse. It's not just kind of the wide world. Like I'm not going to buy one of these for my house, and neither are any of you. They have clinical and technical end users, which are very important to them in the actual client sites, but they also have a vast variety, thousands in fact, of staff users who are accessing information through the intranet, not the internet. And they had far too many places to look at to get information of how to maintain, install, and configure one of these babies. So we did the usual kind of stuff and then some. We did a content inventory and audit, user and task analysis. We created writing guidelines, models, information architecture, and all that good stuff. And then we laid out a cross-channel delivery strategy. And we reviewed and implemented a CMS and a content API. So we didn't look at a new way to create better PDFs or a new way to create better CHM files. We abstracted it all out and said we're going to create all the content in one place and give you a programming interface, that's application programming interface, API, to let you pull it out into various destinations in various ways. So I'm going to skip through to the next bit because of time and show you what the end result looked like. So you saw this before. This is kind of a summary of the previous slide. We had the CMS and the content server. And as I said, in their content server, they don't want to just be able to publish. They want to be able to give social features in the content, technical content. So the users want to be able to favorite articles. The technical support person wants to be able to send a link to a favorite to an end user. Ratings to see how they're doing. They wanted new content highlighted to them so that each time they log in to find answers, they can see what is new versus the last time they were in the system. And they wanted it portable. As I said, they want it inherent in the content, all that metadata, all those relationships. When they access it over the web, when they access it over a mobile device, and also they wanted to be able to integrate that into other systems and eventually integrate it into the product itself so that if you're looking at a piece of hardware that has a screen, you can get content from the documentation directly into the device. And they wanted all this kind of information available simultaneously. So I'm just going to log in here to their content. Okay. I didn't mention in the beginning, I'm currently broadcasting you today from near lovely Lake Geneva in a mountain chalet, which is, goes without saying, is gorgeous. However, doesn't have the best internet connection in the world. So although you can hear me okay, the demonstration materials might be a bit slow. Okay, so I'm getting into the product documentation now. So this is an example of what I call socially enabled content. I've got documentation. I can navigate it as you would expect from any online documentation. I've got my search options. I've got bookmarking, the ability to download content, and so on. There are some differences. So if I look here on the navigation, you can see these little comment bubbles. And I've got 3, 1, 4, 2, etc. And that's telling me that there are comments coming in against these particular pieces of content. If I navigate down here to this topic, the patient support system, and then down into the precise treatment table, I've got a piece of technical content. So this is my page. If it weren't for the stuff on the right, this would be a traditional try-pane help kind of view. But I've got related content here, and this related content is being generated by keyword relationships. So this is not related content because someone made a related reference at the bottom. This is related content because someone has tagged 2 pieces of content with the same subject. So here I've got Z movement as being related to this topic here, because if I click on the Z movement topic, this topic also shares a keyword. So anything that's relevant to Z movement is also relevant to this other primary function and general configuration table topic. I've also got top-rated content. So some of you may have noticed the star rating options here at the top. I can rate content for how useful it is to me. And then the community will be pushing forward the best topics up to the top of this stack here. The system, separately from that, is monitoring hits. It's seeing what do people go to most often, whether they rate it or not. So again, the action of the community is bringing certain content above others for me. And then I have my own history. So this is, if you can see, you can think of most viewed content as the community history. My history is what have I been looking at. So if I want to be a little bit more interactive with this content, I can click over here and say Enable Annotation. And now when I hover, you can see these little bubbles kind of flashing up every now and then. This is my ability to feed back and comment on and discuss content. So here I've got a sentence talking about the 2 areas that are described in this list here. And I'm going to say, I need information on area 803. Ooh. I've got chubby fingers today. And you can see here I can control who this is shared with, and also what kind of information it is. I could have made a note, which is for myself. This is kind of like when you print out a manual, and I've seen this. Engineers who have a manual and it's full of yellow sticky notes, and they've annotated their own printout because that has the page references that are important to them, and so on. Or they take down a PDF and they add their own comments, or a Word document. Here we want to prevent people from taking the content offline. We want them to do the collaboration and do their note-taking and everything online. But in this one, I'm just going to make a comment, and I'm going to share it with everybody and save it in. So the moment that's in there, I've kind of made my contribution and said, you know, this is a piece of content, that's fine, but I need it to be better. And in parallel, somebody else can be looking at that same piece of content if they're logged in. And in a few seconds now, my colleague Mark, who is actually in London right now, Mark is going to say, he also has some feelings on this, and submit his comment into the system. So those of you who are very sharp eyes will have noticed this little bubble has popped up here. If I click it, I can see Mark is also concurring with my request and asking for the change to be made. So that's all come in. So the engineers can be collaborating with each other. So if they have a question, if there's something not clear, they can post a note. Another engineer can benefit from that. They can be posted a link to another piece of documentation to help each other out. But they can also be communicating back, as we are in this case, back to source. And I, as an author, am going to then open up my authoring tool. and turn them around a quick fix. So I'm going to open up the documentation that they've been working on. And here from my CMS, again, sorry about the connection speed there. Here's that same topic again, primary function of the treatment table. As you saw it, I'm going to open that up in my authoring tool. And when I download it, it's going to download not only the content which I wrote last time, but also things that have happened out in the community. So my work is being aided by what's happened after the publishing cycle. It's very significant. Socially enabled means that review is not something that happens before you publish. Review and collaboration is constant. The content is constantly being added to, checked, manipulated, and so on, which makes it better for everybody involved. It's opening really, really slowly today, even more slowly than we did in the practice a few hours ago. So as I said, here's my topic now in my authoring tool. But over here, I can see that it's pulling from the system these annotations, which it showed. So you can see 1538, these annotations came in for the request. If I click Go To, it takes me to where they were talking about. I can see what they're talking about, and I'm going to make the change. Say these 3 areas. Area 301 is for the demo, and then check that back in. So the point of this is that we're looking at the overall solution from various people's perspective, not the perspective of the writer, not the perspective just of the user, but of different people in different contexts. The system has to do certain things for them out in the field, and the system has to do certain things for me as an author working back in the office. It's moving really, really slowly. Sorry about that. So I've checked those changes back in. Connected to the server over a piece of string, as you can see. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to republish this simultaneously to all the formats in which this content is available. So when I hit republish, it's going to generate a new version of the publication with the latest checked-in files. And when I come back in here, if I just reload this page, you can see my new content has come in. But it hasn't just come in on the web. I can do, as I said, I can do things like make a PDF, but I can also, because of the format that this is stored in, download it as an ebook or download it as a Kindle publication. Or I can do something like make my own document out of it. So out in the community, I may decide that my customer is going to benefit from not all this information, but just a couple of bits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bookmark this under Gold Customer and create a bookmark. You can see this little bookmark come in. I'm going to take the Z movement topic as well, bookmark that, also in Gold Customer, and do X and Y movement. Bookmark that as well. So now when I click over to my bookmarks, I've got my own little tree under Gold Customer of the content which was relevant to me. So when I click download to make a PDF, I'm going to say PDF of my bookmarks. And I can choose all of them, or I can choose one branch of the bookmarks tree that I've created. I'm just going to choose that one. And when I hit download, it's querying the system to pull all that content that I've bookmarked together for me, and it's going to generate me a PDF. So seeing how slow my system is going today, I'm just going to jump out because I can see how we're doing on time. Come back and look at my PDF in a minute. Okay, so when the organization wanted to get this system, they had priorities like they wanted it cheaper. They wanted this delivery faster. They wanted it to be auditable and compliant in a regulated industry. But they wanted to lower support calls. This wasn't a documentation project. It was a technical knowledge project. So better technical knowledge out in the field for both customers and staff maintainers meant lower support costs. They wanted to contribute to the knowledge sharing efforts so that if someone has a technical tip, then that can go into the system and be shared for everybody, making them more efficient, lowering machine downtime, and also they wanted more consistency so that across all documents, across all formats, they spoke with one voice and increased their brand impression so that when people looked at their content and the way they delivered it, it would reflect positively on the brand. The users wanted it up to date, they wanted it simpler, they wanted to do things like that bookmark example where it was organized according to their taxonomy, their table of contents, relevant, consistent. They wanted their notes available wherever they happened to be on, and when they gave a note, they expected the technical communicators to work with them. They expected a fast turnaround of some kind of fix. They also needed to go online and offline, so a website wasn't good enough, a PDF wasn't good enough. They needed both. And they wanted visual, lots of pictures as I showed you. Okay, my PDF should be done by now. Open it up. Oh no. Damaged PDF.
Noz, just as a time, watching our time here, about 3 more minutes or so, because we have quite a few questions we'd like to be able to fit in as well.
Right, okay. Well, I'll just try to rerun my PDF. I'm delighted that there's a lot of questions. Okay, just wanted to show you this. Again, other things about being in the cloud. When we divorce content from its format, so when we're not talking about Word or FrameMaker or HTML, and we're talking about truly neutral, then we can deliver it wherever we want. This is the same system, and this is, I've only got screenshots today because it's not running on my system, but this is the same thing running on an iPad. So I go into the documentation. Hey, there we got a PDF this time. Sorry about that. Sorry for the distractions and out of sequence there, but I wanted to show you. So the system generated me the PDF that I asked for with the title that I gave it as a user. I got my content. I can see the content that was just freshly added in the format that I asked for it. It's generated the TOC. You know, if there were index terms, I would have gotten an index, and I could have pulled in relevant glossary entries, and so on and so on. On the iPad, I've got all the same functionality, commenting. You can see those comments coming in here. This is the same page again, area 800, 802, 801. Related items are behind that button. Comments are over here on the left when I want them. But I'm also going to take advantage of the fact that I'm on an iPad. So I can do regular comments like I showed you before. But when I submit that, I can open a support incident by sending a message to the server. I could submit that comment and link to the comment I made to a trip report in the CRM, or I could do email notifications to the technical author or whomever else for attention about that comment. Because I have this ability from any of the platforms to communicate back to the server. And because I'm on an iPad, I've got multimedia options down here. I could record an audio comment. I could take a picture. And over on the right here, I could do a barcode scan with a camera and look at a particular product's barcode and get information particular to that product. If I did take a picture, I could upload that, and as a picture comment, submit it and say, I know, I found the machine in this configuration, and that was a bit odd, I need some help. and submit multimedia because on this platform, I've got that ability. Here we've got the same thing on iPhone, and as I said, this is a real example. We have this running on the iPhone. I just happen to be showing you screenshots today. We've got the library, bookmarks, content and comments, and this is just a shot of, as I said before, this particular customer wants to integrate this with their information lifecycle. So here we're looking at the knowledge base, the running Salesforce.com, and when people on Salesforce.com are contributing knowledge base articles, we want to automatically link these back to formal documentation. And high-rated KB articles, so if we get a high rating here, we can submit those to the CMS as potential content and convert them to data, and automatically or manually link them, KB articles to the CMS as references, and CMS articles to KB articles, so that you have integrated information from different parts of the information lifecycle. So I'm going to kind of wrap up there. I had a few more slides for you, which will probably be available for download. But what I really want to do is get to some of your questions now to make sure that I don't get any further without addressing them.
Excellent. Excellent presentation, Noz. Thank you so much. And we do have quite a few questions.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
For the audience's sake, we will be posting the Q&A on our website, and we'll be providing it to Mekon as well, so that should we not get to your question right now, we will have the ability to respond. So question number one, in the medical devices field, you also have to abide by government regulations such as FDA in the U.S. Does that limit the degree to which you can socialize your content?
Yes, but I don't see that as a problem, really. You are limited to the degree that you can socialize your content, but it just means that you can't do something like push it out into the community and say that it's the community's responsibility. So if you're making a low-cost product or an open source product, you can completely socialize your content. And so in medical devices and in pharmaceuticals, you can't go that far. But I don't think most of my customers, whether in their controlled industries or not, they don't want to go that far. They want to retain control, and they want to socially enable documentation. So you're not limited in how you socially enable, because we can lock down the system, or the implementer can lock down the system, or you can lock down the system, so that certain people can't see certain things until they've gone through certain approval workflows. Certain teams can only see what people in their same team have posted, and things like that, which keep the data within the auditability rules and within the data access rules, so that you shouldn't have that kind of problem. And as I said, this prototype is in medical devices, and we have had extensive discussions with the regulatory and safety people about what we're allowed to do.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Noz. Next question. Why DITA? Since it's really just one way to structure content, what's the value of adopting it in this strategy?
These projects are not trivial. These projects take a while. There's a lot of decision making to be done. There is cost involved, and the DITA standard we found is the best starting point. It's not really, sounds a bit silly, but really we are getting to a point of why not DITA, because people have more trouble answering that than I do why DITA. I do whole kind of hour-long presentations on that by itself, but I will say it's an international standard. It has the metadata model embedded very well, and there's a huge amount of processing tools, templates, and technologies available to you, which if you did another way of structuring the information, you would have to pay for it yourself. So you're talking about a project that can be done in one order of magnitude of cost and time, and raising the cost and time to the next order of magnitude if you try to do it with your own definitions.
Okay, thank you. How do you manage DB bandwidth with multiple hits from the community?
That is a completely techie question. That's not a strategy question. So server replication, rollover, bandwidth management, and so on. That's not my. First of all, it's not my particular field, and also I think that there are a lot of other questions and issues that you have to address first. That's the kind of thing I would like to engage in discussion with offline.
Okay, fair enough. How do you manage constant content update and localization?
Well, as I said, there's a workflow aspect of this. One of the big dangers is good editorial process. If something comes in from the social media, it doesn't go straight into the documentation. If it does, that's fully social documentation. Socially enabled documentation means that the cloud is enabling all sorts of different forms of access, but it only gets to become formal documentation once it's been through process. So you can have a choice. We could, for example, automatically localize things coming in from the cloud because they haven't been editorialized or proofed, and they come at their own risk. But then things that come into the system and are formally adopted into the formally published documentation would go through the usual translation process, and they wouldn't be re-released until someone said that they were ready. So how you set up your process is quite unique to the organization. How many updates are we talking about? And so on. But I think a general rule of thumb is documentation cycles of the team will tend to continue to cycle with the product updates. If the product is agile, then you've got lots of little updates. If it's a hardware product that's updated every year, you've got big spaces in between your updates, and maybe you will be doing content updates more frequently. So there's no one answer for that, but setting up an editorial process where you delay translation of things that come out from the social documentation is kind of a must.
Okay, I think we have time to take one more question. We seem to have quite a few, by the way, Noz, based on the actual interface itself. What you showed as CMS and web interface, is that custom developed, or did you use existing software? If so, which software?
Okay, well, okay, so what I'm showing you is, I said we were looking at the cloud. So this interface that we're looking at, this is one face of, this particular thing is one face of a service that we do provide as a cloud-based service. So I'm using it as an example to illustrate the concepts. I don't want to give you the impression that the demo, the session today isn't valuable unless you use our service. But the one that you're looking at was developed by us. This is a combination of open source. We're using things like the Exist XML database under the hood. It's powered by xQuery. Then this particular UI was custom developed. But I can show you, for example, if I look for one of our customers on Google, Betfair, this is one of the ones I didn't have time to show you. They're using a similar interface based on the same platform publicly to collaborate with their partners. I don't have a login for their documentation, so here I've been to Google. It's in German because I'm in Switzerland. But here you see them. They've put up their API documentation, and that is using a very similar looking interface, obviously, with the same kind of features. I can't sign in and comment because I'm not an approved user. But so they're using it. Here we're using it for that medical devices company. And this is the same content in one interface. So if I look at the precise treatment table topic, there it is. If I look at it here, you can see how it might look on the public internet versus the intranet. They wanted a more pretty graphical way of navigation. So this is the same content again. Precise treatment table. And I get to that same topic, and it's got a different look and feel. I've removed the social features here because this is a consumption-only, read-only website. But you can see the changes that I made a few minutes ago are live because they're all coming from the same central source.
Excellent. Well, that concludes our session for today. Thank you all for joining, and thank you very, very much, Noz, for a tremendously interesting and informative presentation.
Thank you very much for having me.